board to order. I see all members are present, so for the roll call, I think we can simply note that. Yes. And similarly for the agenda, unless there are objections, I think we can approve it without a motion. Unanimous consent? Okay. Minutes. Any comments on the minutes before us?
The minutes are excellent, but I'd like to see them signed.
Okay.
That was just an accident.
Oh.
I'd already copied them, so I didn't want to redo them.
Okay. Yeah, they're wonderful minutes.
I think then we can also have unanimous consent to adopt the minutes as presented, yes? So the public comment, anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on something not before the board tonight? Seeing none, we will skip the consent agenda. There are no items and move on to public hearing design review for Napa Valley Adventist Retirement Estate. Sandra.
So the first item on your agenda tonight is the result of a complaint that was made to the fence and the storage shed that are erected in the front yard of the Adventist home without a permit. And there's also a letter of opposition in your packet as well from one of the neighbors who couldn't attend tonight's meeting. The two elements that we're looking at tonight are the chain link fence, and it shows a picture of it here in the front yard. It's about a 4-foot metal chain link fence, and it's used as a dog enclosure. There are some other photos of it. And then the second element tonight is this 108 square foot storage shed that's located on the other side of that block wall, and it's a neutral two-tone shed that's used in connection with the kitchen. And the zoning and design ordinances require design approval for physical improvements, and it specifically provides that fences and sheds that are visible from the street should be treated as an integral part of the site architecture and should use materials, colors, and detailing that is consistent with the primary structure on the property. With regards to the fence, as it is constructed, it is neither an integral part of the site architecture nor the materials, colors, and detailing consistent with that structure. It's a stark metal fence that draws attention to itself rather than blending in and being more consistent as the ordinances envision. The applicant proposes to correct this by inserting green painted wood slats into the fence openings so that its colors and materials are more consistent with the building and its green trim. It would be similar to the fence that surrounds the pool area at the adjacent condo association, and there's a photo of it here. Staff finds that this design meets the findings for design review, and it allows use of the existing fence without replacing it with different or new materials. And any adverse visual effect of the stark metal fence is mitigated, and we're suggesting a condition of approval that the measures the applicant proposes are carried through with. The second element is the shed, and it's a manufactured structure that's located behind the block fence, and it features gray tones that are generally consistent with the structure and its colors and that wall as well. And so we find that the design review findings are met in this regard. However, the design ordinance also provides that sheds should be situated outside the front setback, and so a variance is required when you consider this item tonight, and 6 findings will need to be made for that variance. The shed serves a functional purpose in that location it is used as storage for the kitchen, which is in that adjacent building. And the 6 findings are met in staff's opinion in that the unusual shape of the parcel and the distribution of the structures are extraordinary circumstances that are not generally applicable to other properties. The shed is used in conjunction with the adjacent kitchen, and based on the property shape and building layout, a practical difficulty exists in locating the shed on the property. It's not a grant of special privilege based on the shape of the property and the building placement. It's necessary for the preservation of unfenced open space areas on the property. It is not detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other properties because its visual impact is small and rather limited. Its view is obscured generally by the block wall, although it does poke up beyond the top of it. And in this location, it keeps the shed from being located in the valuable open space areas on the property. It's also generally in keeping with the zoning and design ordinance and the general plan because it preserves the site open space and it's located in the most inconspicuous location on the property. Staff is recommending approval of both the design review application and the variance, subject to the condition listed in your staff report. Thank you.
Any questions of staff?
When I was reading this, do we not have an overview of the building, where all the structures are or anything like that? I couldn't get a visual of what space was actually there. We don't have one of those?
No.
Okay.
No questions.
Madam, any questions? No. Is the applicant here and would like to speak to anything?
My name's Don Lane, and I'm the administrator for the retirement home. I came here in 1990, and we've worked together before. I was here from 1990 to 2001, till I retired. And they asked me the first this year to come back again, so I told them I'd be glad to. 3 years ago, we had to do some work in our kitchen area. And in order to do it, we had to tear out a lot of things and redo them. And that's why the building was put there, because our space is very, very limited. We only have 5 feet from the side of our building to the edge of our property line, all the way around the building, except for the front here or our parking lots. And we tried to make it as inconspicuous as we could by having it as near the color that we could and setting it where we did. That way we can still use it for our kitchen. We come in and out the door that's right there. And we have space to store things. Without that, we're kind of in a bind because we just don't have the space and we don't have the room or the place to go. And it's too bad when they built it that they didn't give us more property, but they didn't do it. So as I was looking at this, I want to thank you, and Sandra, I'd like to thank you for the work that you've done on helping us with this. We plan to make some changes. With the fence, we have already ordered the slats so that our fence where the dogs are, and the reason we have a dog place is that we've allowed some of the people that would like to have an animal to have an animal. You know, cats and dogs are good for older people, and they love them, and they may put them out there for a short period of time and then keep them back in their apartments primarily. And so we have tried to order the materials that would look like the fences of the condos around their swimming pool and their hot tub. And the parking lot across the street, they've used these type of things. And in the garbage area where they have their garbage, they have a fence or a gate with the slats in it. And so we've already ordered that. It's not here yet, but it will be here. And it should match the color of the condo as well as fairly close match the green on our building. And we've changed the colors on our building so we have a little more beautiful building now. It was a different color before. As I was looking at this, when we did the kitchen 3 years ago, the planner informed us at that time, as far as we can find out, and I wasn't here, but from what I've researched, that we did have a variance for that shed out in front. And that's kind of what we've gone on all this time. We thought we were within the regulations because, like I said, we really need it. When you have 75 or 80 people, you know, to store things, we just don't have the room to do it. We've taken an apartment on the inside and we fixed it up for a storage area. and that helps us, but that just was not enough. So 3 years ago, they planned it this way, and it does help us. So, you know, we would hope that you would grant to us a variance so that we don't, I don't know what we do with the rest of it, with the utensils that are in there and the food that we can keep there. We'd have to find someplace else, and I'm not sure where it would be because we just don't have it. But yet we want to be in accordance with the condo association and with the city planning. We don't want to step out of bounds, but yet we tried, we thought we were within the bounds. And then after talking to Sandra, there was a question, and so that's where we are at this time. You have any questions? I kind of, you know, I've looked at this, and as I've looked over these comments, when the fence is painted, it's going to fit right in. It'll look just like the rest of the property around, including the condo association. And when we take a look at the shed, it's behind the brick wall. Most of it is. I guess about a third of it is up above. When I first came back the first of the year, I really didn't notice it. I knew that they had done that, but it didn't stand out like a sore thumb. I thought it was fairly much like the color of the existing building at the present time. And hopefully you folks will, you know, take a look at it and let us know what you feel like we need to do. We are willing to do anything, but like I say, we do need the space. We just don't have it. If I'd have been here when they decided to build, we'd have had a little more property than what they have given to us. But 5 feet out from the, you know, is not enough. You can't really put anything. And we were told that we could have probably 3 buildings like that, little buildings, for the amount of property that we have. Well, we don't have 3, but like I say, we've tried to stay within what we were supposed to. So I hope we haven't erred too far, but, okay. Any questions?
Excuse me, I did have a question, and that is, in the staff report, there's a mention that there have been complaints from other residents about the noise from the dogs, and that the barking seems to echo from the other buildings. Is that?
No, that's wrong. The dogs are not out there long enough. We have had some barking, not very much. One of the little dogs is right there in an apartment right as you go out the gate, and the lady who owns it, you know, puts it out there for it to have a little exercise and whatnot. But I have not, when I read that and heard that, I've been out there a number of times to listen, and I have not heard a lot of barking, and it does not radiate around, no more than dogs in the condo homes or the dogs in town.
So
I checked on that to be sure, and it doesn't. You may hear a little bit occasionally, but not very often.
Thank you.
Okay?
And I read also in the report that the staff has been out there to observe, but has been unable to observe any problems.
That's right.
Thank you.
No other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I had a quick question. What did you do for storage before the shed? That was part of, there was a kitchen remodel or something?
The kitchen remodel, and when they remodeled that, we lost some of the space that we had at that time.
Okay.
And so that's why they brought the shed in 3 years ago, in order to fill that space that we needed, because the county or the health department said, you've got to do some work in here. And in doing it, we did a major overhaul, but we lost space
Sure, okay,
because it took space from us, you know.
right.
And that's why we brought this in. So we had a place to put things that we didn't have any other place for. Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
Sorry, I have
Please,
one more
go
question.
ahead.
I think one of the biggest things is it really is on the front of the building. Is there really, I mean, I'm even trying to look, and that's why I wanted kind of an overview of where all the buildings were, because I don't know off the top of my head where everything's situated. I understand being right outside the kitchen is very convenient,
Yes.
but it seems like there's even other space on the other side of that building looking barely from the background of another picture, so it's not accurate. That's why I wanted to check with you. I mean, if there's any way we could move that to the other side of that building.
The other side of the
nice.
building has a large cement platform, and they had used it in the past for different shuffle games and things like that. And it would not have been available had it taken place during my time here the first time. They haven't used it as a shuffleboard lately, but that's what it was primarily for an exercise area. And they chose to put it where they did because it was the most inconspicuous. If you have it over on the other side, what you're talking about, it's going to stand out as a shed. You're going to see the whole complete shed. And by where we put it, at least the wall covers 2/3 of it. And all you see is the top part. Okay?
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Before we deliberate, I'd like to suggest that if we entertain any motions, we do the fence and the shed as separate motions. I think they're distinct enough to warrant that.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Comments or?
I guess my biggest comment is inconspicuous to whom. I really feel like there is other space on there, and it might not be the most pleasant for the inhabitants, and I understand that. But I mean, I feel like it's pretty clear that it says not within the setback, and it is right there on the street. And yes, it's mostly covered, but as far as the shed goes, I feel like it could be put behind that building somewhere. And be still usable, but, and I can't say without knowing exactly the floor plan, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying that I'm in favor of the home having a fence to enclose the dogs, and I'm in favor of them having extra storage, and whether it's in the form of a shed or something else. To go a little contrary to what staff has recommended, I'm concerned that the slats are going to make the fence bulkier and stand out more. I would prefer to see a more like a vinyl covering on the links, the standard green vinyl covering, something that is still transparent but helps it blend in to the surroundings. And in terms of the shed, I don't. Aesthetically, I don't take any issue with it. It does blend in nicely. And the findings for a variance, I could make some of them. I could not make number one, that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances that traditionally has been misused. I'm not saying in Yountville, but historically throughout California, and it usually applies to, is there a huge rock somewhere that's precluding development in that area, that's forcing the structure closer into the setback, or is there a stream? Is there a physical barrier, not a lot line that was created or a building that was placed? And I would be concerned about that setting precedent in the future for you build a home and then 10 years later you say, oh, shoot, I don't have room for my shed or the garage that I want to build, and I need a variance. So while I don't take issue at all with having the shed, I can't make all the findings for the variance.
Actually, I am less concerned about the shed because I do think that the view of it is obstructed somewhat by the wall, and it is in sort of the same color scape. But I do have concerns too about the green slats in the metal fence, but I'd be willing to grant the variance in this case. It's probably, I do support the idea that for retired persons having pets, it's a very good thing, and pet parks are all over. But I don't think, anyway, I would support the variance for the pet park and the slats I would support that.
Madam?
I cannot imagine any house in Yountville with an inadequate kitchen that would be granted the ability to augment that space with a shed. It seems completely illogical to me. An architectural nightmare. And on the basis of these complaints, that addresses the shed. I agree with Matt. I think putting the vinyl slates is insult to injury. I think the thing needs to be looked at. I think the noise factor needs to be addressed fully. I can't approve it as it stands.
For my part, for the shed, as has been said, I think the findings necessary for a variance are exceedingly onerous and difficult to make, and I'm not persuaded that every other alternative for kitchen storage has been provided, so I cannot support it. On the fence, I will come in favor of slats with the following caveat. Rather than painted wood, which will deteriorate over time, both the paint and the small thin lath that would be woven in between them is of very poor quality. One can buy color-fast vinyl or other manufactured products where the color and the material itself will last a lot longer. To the extent there's not agreement for slats, I think Matt touched on this earlier, it's not difficult to buy the mesh itself with a factory-applied permanent coating, often similarly hot applied vinyl that's much more durable. I do think that the addition of slats would be appropriate, but at a minimum I would support the color. And lastly, I'll put this as delicately as I can, but it should be constructed in a better fashion. The top rails are out of level, and they are not in a consistent direction. One of the things I would note, particularly with respect to slats, is the fabric is just wrapped around the corner posts. When installing slats in a chain link fence, each run of fabric should stop short of the post and be independently anchored to the post, because you can't wrap slats around the corner. So to a certain extent, having it here makes it easy to decide. It's a great color and materials board, but again, as gently as I can, it should be assembled level and plumb. So for the shed, is there a motion? Is there support for any motion on the shed first? If there's not a motion, it is not approved. So for lack of a motion, the variance is not approved for the shed. For the fence, is there a motion to approve the fence?
I'll make a motion to approve the fence with the vinyl slats as the material in green. I would also include that I think the chain link should be, as in the other picture, green as well, and not be a contrasting silver with green slats.
I will second that motion. All those in favor? Aye. And opposed?
No,
Okay. Got it?
Got it.
Next item is review and comment only, sending recommendations to the council for Pacific Blues design review. Sandra.
So the second item on your agenda is a request from Pacific Blues to do some exterior modifications, and these include some changes from an earlier design approval of about 2 years ago. And it's when they submitted for building permit and were showing things that were slightly different, we decided to bring it back to you. The property is listed on the National Register along with 4 other properties that are on the V Marketplace property. And because of this special status as a historic resource, the original proposed changes were analyzed for consistency with the Secretary of Interior standards for remodels. And they were reviewed at that time by the applicant's historical consultant and also peer-reviewed by Napa County Landmarks and found to be consistent with those standards. At that time, the applicant had requested approval of a metal roof, but based on the recommendation of the ZDRB, the Town Council ultimately approved a cedar shingled roof. And the changes that the applicant is proposing with this application are to eliminate some of the rear deck modification and expansions and other expansion areas, to modify the trellis over the rear deck and cover it with a waterproof awning fabric, to add a new south access with stairs to the deck and eliminate the existing west access stairs to improve the deck circulation, to incorporate a metal roof on the entire structure, both the cafe and the former balloon building, to use a black powder-coated iron balustrade for the deck railing rather than the approved cable railing, to add a new approximately 100 square foot deck at the northeast corner of the building, to add a gable roof feature, a new entry door and transom to the former balloon building, and to replace exterior building lighting, add new building lighting, and add new cap lighting on the deck posts. Many of these requested modifications are considered minor modifications by the code. So tonight's presentation focuses on the design elements on the east elevation, what's known as the primary facade. And these are the roof, the deck railing, the north deck expansion, changes to the former balloon building, and lighting. And when the historical consultants originally analyzed the roof, they noted that that was consistent and historically accurate for a building constructed in approximately 1870. And they were of the opinion that a metal roof was an improvement over the shakes because the shakes are thick and busy, and that detracts from the brick architecture of the building. As earlier proposed, the metal roof was only to cover the cafe, not the balloon building, and it's now proposed for both structures for a seamless roof line. And some of the issues raised by the ZDRB, such as glare and rust issues, are really not issues with modern metal roofs, and staff points to the community center project as an example. The railing as approved, I should flip between these so you can see the difference. That shows the metal roof on both versus this. In this photo, it shows the horizontal aircraft cable railing around the deck, and the consultants found that was consistent with the standards because it was minimal in structure and didn't detract from the building. The new black iron balustrades have somewhat the same effect in that they're simple and allow focus to remain on the building. And they're compatible with the railroad theme. The north deck expansion seen in this photo is around the former balloon building, and it replaces an approved 300 square foot rear deck expansion, and accordingly there's no FAR issue, and it serves to anchor the north end of the building. The lighting that is proposed, this shows the original lighting, and the applicant proposes replacing or redoing the lighting on the existing building and adding new lighting to the balloon building, and then using alternating deck posts of low voltage bulbs. And they're proposing a black metal railroad theme type fixture for the building. Staff's main concerns are with the changes to the former balloon building, and it consists of the gable roof entry, the entry door, and the transom. When the earlier project was approved, there were no changes to this building proposed. You can see that in this photo or drawing. And so this is considered a historic addition to the original building, given its construction in the early 1900s, and so it's also held to the Secretary of Interior's standards. And those standards generally provide that the primary facade should be preserved. There's some question on whether this design does that, whether this is significant because of the new level of detail it provides. And for this reason, Napa Valley Landmarks will review this design. They can't get out to the property until Thursday of this week, so we don't have that conclusion for you at this meeting. But we will have that to provide to council when we take it to them November 3rd. This project also requires an environmental clearance because it's noted on the National Register, and it was earlier reviewed during that earlier approval, and there was a mitigated negative declaration that applied to the changes. That's incorporated here by reference, and any of the new changes that will be reviewed by Landmark and their conclusions will be incorporated into that as well before the council approves the project. And so we're asking you to review and comment on the design elements so that we can provide that to council.
Questions of staff? Marita?
No, I just wish we had the input from the historical perspective, but it's a good report, thank you.
Madam?
No, good report, thank you.
Just as a point of clarification, on page 3, under the gable roof, new entry door, and transom, the staff analysis, staff's main concern was regarding the additions or revisions to the balloon building?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions of staff?
None.
Sandra, I have one. I want to make sure I understand both your proposed condition of approval number 2 and what you just described. Landmarks will have a report in front of the council when the council hears it.
Yes.
So council is free to take that as advice and do with it as it sees fit.
Right.
And I ask that because while Landmarks is a very venerable organization, I'm reluctant to give them approval authority. I think their advice is very useful. So this condition is presented, talks about that Landmarks must approve it. Must review it, I think, is reasonable and
Right.
offer comments, but I don't think we should be in a position to
Noted.
devolve authority to a third-party organization. So I would like to see that changed. That's my only question of you. Jeff, would you like to say anything?
Sure. Jeff Steen, Pacific Blues Cafe. Thank you for hearing this again. And I'm sorry the delay has been so long, but due to the economy and a few things that I felt it was necessary to pull back a little bit and wait. The purpose of this is to, of course, get going on it and do it in stages as far as a cost item. I think the balloon shop is a mainstay in the middle of town there. It's a visual coming in and out of town, and I think we need, and plus I'm paying rent on it now. So I want to get it rolling as best I can. As far as the Landmark questions, we've done everything they've asked and stuck to by what they said. And so when they do come out, I don't have a problem with that and being a part of that. I don't know if the balloon building is a historical site as listed as the Pacific Blues site itself, because it was originally just a field building. But we will do whatever it takes to keep it in line with what is an existing historical site. The entrance, only thing is a difference there is the entrance is that we wanted to, and I think Glenn was part of that, is that the fact that if you look at it now, it's almost like a bad hat coming over the top of the building as you walk in, and when you come up into it, you really can't see the building and or the facade itself. And what we want to do is open it up, make it more of an entrance, and that'll be the front door. All the other entrances around the building will be blocked off, so to speak, except for the south side on the far end will be another entrance there with a hostess stand coming up on the deck, so you only have two. If any of you have ever dined there or come through there, it's always disjointed, so to speak, when everybody's coming in from the bathroom, the back deck, the front deck, or wherever it would take. And so what we're trying to do is just to organize that mayhem, so to speak. And so I think a lot of the changes itself, even as you read on the back covering into a Bottega type covering there, it's just a cost issue as we got started and Lael, who originally had done the plans, great ideas and making it look like a French train station and the whole package and all that, but my goodness, it just went through the roof. And so at this point, I'm trying to keep that in line, but also give me more space in the winter times and or covered area with heat too, so to speak. And in the summer when it's hot, some of that will be retractable and a beautiful awning setup similar to what Bottega has. That's what I'm, in my mind, that's what I'm thinking to match. But at this point, stage one is the existing building, Pacific Blues, cleaning it up. It's 13 years tired. It needs to be painted. The decks, front and back, need to be redone, cleaned up and fixed. Again, the entrances put in to get better. And then the roofing itself, we originally got approved on the metal roofing, which I thought was going to be a cleaner look. And from what council had said, it would also highlight the building better. That's why we had the metal strand railings around, but that got costly too, so that's why we changed that back to the other type. But so we figured, and with Jan and Vintage 1870, that the balloon building roof should match that one off the street, and so that's why we proposed that too, just so you know that. But as far as everything else is, it's just being done more in stages at this point, rather than a whole project all at once, because it was just too costly. But that's my plan, and as we move forward, eventually we'll get to the back deck, and after we get this handled, and Glenn Silman will be doing the contracting.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff?
No?
So I just want to make sure I understood correctly. The balloon building, is that going to be the new entrance? Is
That'll be the front entrance, yes.
Okay.
Right now, when you walk into Pacific Blues, you come right in there at the front door, kind of right into the wall there, and you're kind of wondering where you're going. What we're going to do is put it there and then come in through the other side, so you'll bring right into the main dining room.
Okay.
So it'll be a waiting area, so to speak. The beverage area that we have in the existing building now, when you walk in, it's all crammed in the corner. It's kind of like working out of a bed closet for 13 years, and it's just everybody's on top of everybody, so we're just kind of spreading it out a little bit. The only existing, on this plan, on this project, at this point, it will be the 100-foot extra deck on the north side.
Sure. Okay.
Are you planning on wrapping the deck around the side of the balloon building?
Just from the window side, just around to the existing fence there,
Okay.
and then the window that ends the balloon building right there. And it'll bring it out a little bit, and then eventually, when we do get into the final stages, that whole area will be where the coffee area will come out to that lawn, and that'll all be landscaped. Because that, to me, again, as you're driving south through town here, you look at the Vintage 1870 and look at the back of our building, you see our garbage door, you see the back end of the restrooms, you see it's just an eyesore. And so I want to make that visually as pretty as when you're coming north, looking at that whole corner there. I want to do the same thing coming back down, make it look right, clean it up with landscaping and the whole thing.
And I have a question, then at the back where the new entrance will be, Jeff, is that at the
On the
at the
corner,
west,
south side.
southwest end?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
southeast end.
Southeast? Oh, on
Right off
Washington?
Yes,
Uh-huh,
but it's going to go straight out. So you have just two steps right there. There's one table that sits there by itself, so to
Yeah.
speak. Probably your
Yeah.
favorite table, right? But it's right there. That'll be the front entrance on that side.
I see,
And the ramp will continue right there too for handicap.
okay.
So, are you gonna? So you're gonna remove those steps then on the west side? Was that correct? Or is that gonna
On
remain
the
open?
west side,
That faces Vintage.
well, that area there, eventually in stage two, it's going to be that deck, that will be pushed out a little bit for the covering. And so I'm not sure, probably yes, at this point, because then it'll eliminate the entrance on there too. Because that's really the worst one. When we get busy, it just dissects the whole deck as people come in and out, that is.
No more questions for Jeff? Is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak to this item? Seeing none,
Thank you,
Thanks,
Board.
Jeff. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and make recommendations to council. Who's ready? Marita?
I'm not ready.
Madam?
It sounds acceptable to me. Historically, there was a fluff about that roof
Yeah, we went
because,
through all that, and then eventually came right back, because everybody thought it was gonna be an old stainless steel, rusted out roof, but if you've seen it, the new metal roofs, they're beautiful.
exactly, and
They're
the,
clean looking, and it's, and in hindsight, Leo and everybody else, and Paul at the time was on the landmark board, they say it'll make the building pop even better, so.
and that's how there was a metal roof on there originally, was it?
Originally, yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's how I got the front deck on there too. The picture originally had my walkway.
that's right, that's right. So it's acceptable, thank you.
I would have to say I definitely agree with the metal roof. I like that a lot more. I'm glad you're moving forward. Except one of my favorite things, I think, is to sit at the front deck and watch the confusion as people don't know where to go. So I'll be sad to see that happen. But I think it's great, great that you're changing that. I appreciate the metal roof. My one suggestion is I like that metal cabling. That seems a little modern to me. I like the idea of the powdered black will fit a lot better with the old train station feel. So that would be my suggestion, to go more that way. And then as far as the lighting, I like if you can keep that black again. I like how it is now. I totally agree with the downlighting from the railing if you want. It's definitely a little dark out there sometimes. And I do have one. I really would like to hear what Landmark has to say about changing the gabling on the Adventures Loft. I know it does look maybe a little odd right now, but I'm looking at all the lines, and all the lines are horizontal, and that'll be an addition of some vertical lines in the front there. So that is a considerable design change. So I just
Well, it might also match the peaks, so to speak, if you look around the structures now and how they're done, especially with the addition that they put to cover the walk-in on the backside and the existing building of Pacific Blues, they all have sort of peaks, so I thought maybe it would give it that kind of symmetry, so.
So I agree that I think we should see what Landmarks has to say
Yeah,
about it.
that'd be fine.
That's all.
I like the metal roof. I'd like to know what color it's going to be. What,
Either dark, that's up to Jan. She's
Okay.
gonna, and Jan and Egan, but it'll either be a dark chocolate or probably black, I'm not sure. Something to that effect.
okay.
I don't know if you've seen the one in Rutherford there, the wine shop, wine bar, across from the post office.
Yeah.
That's the one I keep saying, that's what I like the way it looks.
Okay.
It's brick and it's done beautifully.
It's not hot pink or purple or anything. Okay.
Blue,
I just wanted to check.
civic blue.
Okay, so I'm in favor of the metal roof. I hate to be the one outlier here, but I'm not real hot on the hipped roof over the. Yeah, it looks a little tacked on, and I like the cleaner lines of just.
Straight across.
If that matches with the door, I mean, I guess you still have to have that awkward hat, I think you were calling it, or
Right.
if you went that direction. But I like the use of the balloon building, and I like where you're headed. I wonder if having the balloon building as the main entrance will lead to confusion, because the bulk of Pacific Blues is in the other building, and you have the double doors there leading in, albeit small, but I know that's a different issue, and we're not here to really comment on that. But
Something like that, we can always change that as far as back to another entrance, of some sort, where it is now.
okay.
We have to.
I figure if you're still serving IPAs out of that room and, like the main room, then everything should be all right.
Sorry. You want me to sing a song here?
And my only other comment is, as you go to council, the plans are a little confusing. Things are labeled as existing instead of proposed.
Clean it up.
And then the wraparound porch or deck on the north side isn't noted on the plan. It's not shown on the plan. So those are the only other couple things.
On the new plans, it's not on there?
Well, that or I'm missing it, which,
It's different on all of them. I think it's shown from. the
It might be
primary site
existing
plan.
and,
It is.
yeah.
A11. Third sheet in.
okay.
But it's different on all of these different versions, so yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay, so it's on the site plan, and I was looking at, let's see. This- Okay, well, I see how it's on there. That works.
It's just really, and what they're, I think the town is going to change the sidewalk coming down there a little bit. And so it's just the existing deck that's there now that ends right at the end of the building there. It's going to be cut the corner a little bit and then straight back to the fence. It's not a major addition as far as a big deck going out on the lawn or anything at this point. It's just to round out the building a little bit as you come in.
And I'd note that I'm very in favor of having more outdoor space and bringing that part of the street more alive. You know, right now
Right.
you've got the deck on the east side, but it's really small, and it'd be great to have more people out there. And so I'm in favor of it.
Okay.
It wasn't really clear on the plans.
Thank you.
For my part, I'll only say, please hurry up. I'm excited for you. I'm looking forward to it. And the council will take consideration of Landmark's comments. I would, however, revise your condition of approval number 3 and not let the lighting be staff level. I've long insisted that there should be a photometric study of the exterior lighting available at design review. So with that minor caveat, prepare that so that
No neons or anything like that.
the design ordinance has very specific metrics on the exterior lighting, and no one but an electrical engineer
Right.
can tell us that, is it a half a foot candle
Right,
5
right.
feet from the property? And I think that study, which they're not difficult to do, should be part of the final design review package.
And the ones that are in the plans now are downlight, kind of like an old train station style.
I understand that. I'm saying an exhibit that shows the light spillage should be part
Okay.
of the final design review
Oh,
package.
okay. Good point.
That's all. Do you have enough?
Yes.
So that concludes that item. We now move on to design review for the Bartizono residence.
I brought Glenn here. Didn't no questions for him? I mean, I have to buy him dinner.
And this is also review and comment,
It is, yes.
so no action taken. During, once,
This last item on your agenda is a proposal for a 4,179 square foot, one-story residence located at the southeast corner of the Bartisano complex. And this map shows the whole complex, and this shows the site itself and the building as it sits on that property. The building has been designed to be compatible with the Bartisano Inn and Spa and uses many of the same design elements and materials, including the stone veneer, the cedar siding and weathered steel siding, the painted metal fascia, and the metal and wood fencing and gates, and including the flat rooftops. It also includes stucco walls, pyramid skylights, deep overhangs, and a 6-foot tall curved block wall that features a 2-way waterfall out to the public realm and also into the private courtyard. The result is a seamless integration of the house onto the Bartisano site. A maximum height of 14 feet 9 inches is proposed, and a front setback of 20 feet with rear and side setbacks of 5 feet. And access is gained via a shared driveway off of Fennell that leads to a motor court at the rear of the property, as shown here. The parcel is part of the master development plan for the Bartisano complex, and that included the 62-unit inn, the 25-unit affordable housing project, and this single-family residence. It also included public site amenities such as the extension of the town's pedestrian and bike path on the south and east borders of the property, a new bridge over Hopper Creek to connect with those paths, a passive park at the southwest corner of the property, and deep 40-foot setback from Yount that is planted with vines. And These SketchUp illustrations show the building looking south, and it will wrap around to the east and then south sides to show the different elevations. The gray buildings in the left-hand corner are the Bardesano Inn, and its two-story structure. This would be at the corner, and it shows how it sits on a 3-foot retaining wall at this deepest point. And this shows the front setback facing Yonk Street. The property is zoned plan development, which allows flexibility both in the creation of and the development of the lot. And as proposed, it is consistent with the town's zoning ordinance and design ordinances. With respect to FAR, single-family residences are generally allowed an FAR of 25%, but the zoning and design ordinances allow a FAR bonus where projects contribute to the town's affordable housing. And in this case, the 25-unit affordable housing allows a FAR of 40% for this property. Requested is an FAR of 37%, which takes into account several exemptions, one being the garage that is located on the rear half of the property, and then 2 energy-efficient mechanical rooms. Without these exemptions, the FAR would be 43%. The building height at 14 feet 9 inches is within the allowable 20-foot height maximum. And the setbacks, and as regards to the setbacks, there are no clear front, rear, or side yard setbacks. It's located in the southeast corner of the project. It doesn't have public street frontage, and it's considerably set back from the nearest adjacent residences. And the zoning and design ordinances give flexibility in determining front setbacks for odd and irregular shaped lots. And in this case, the owner and developer selected the west-facing elevation as the front setback, and it features a 20-foot setback consistent with the code. Proposed are 5-foot side and rear setbacks, and the master development plan process of which this project was part of allows setbacks of 5 feet, and staff supports the 5-foot rear yard setback, where normally a 20-foot setback would be required, because the east building elevation is set back over 40 feet from the center line of Hopper Creek and an even greater distance to the residences that are in the Heritage Estates. And the planned development district that the project is within also gives flexibility specifically as to setbacks when public amenities are provided, and in this case, the ones I've noted are rather significant. This afternoon, I received an email from Kathy Ellick, who has a second residence at Toyon Terrace, and there was a copy at each of your seats tonight. She notes that this is not an example of the Toyon Terrace neighborhood, and the board wouldn't approve a house this size in that neighborhood, and that's true. Those lots are approximately 3,000 to 3,500 square feet smaller, and they are only permitted an FAR of 25% versus the 40% that this project is entitled to based on the affordable housing. And this property is also the subject of a development agreement that allows its development and envisioned it as part of the Bardesano Inn complex. So we're recommending a couple conditions for council's consideration when we take it to them. One is that the property not be used for residential purposes only, and that it not be used as a vacation rental, envisioning when it sells in the future the great opportunity that could be to be associated with the Bardesano Inn. And we're considering another, that the properties on Ivy Court that have rear yards that face the pedestrian path in this residence be entitled to have fences 8 feet in height. They're looking at the pathway already being elevated, and then this residential pad elevated higher than that. So we're asking that you comment on this and provide suggestions or comments to council.
Questions of staff? Rob? No. Matt? Yes, sir. Marita? Adam? I have one one question for you. You've previously described to the east, the setback is nearly 40 feet if we measure it to the center of Hopper Creek. And the center of Hopper Creek is it not, the overall complex property line?
Yes.
What about to the south? The 5 feet is to the parcel's property line. What's the setback to, say, the Ivy Court property lines?
I don't know that specifically.
This is a
That's
re- this
featuring
is
a
a
5-foot
reduction.
setback on the side, which is within the allowable standard to the code, so I didn't give that as high scrutiny.
This was a reduction, so I couldn't scale it, but it would appear to be an addition. How wide is the path? 10 feet? Do you have any
I'd
idea?
have to grab a scale to figure
Well,
that
this
out.
was a reduction. I don't think the scale will remain true.
I have a full size, if you want me to,
I would like to know that,
Okay.
actually, very much.
yeah. To find what the scale is before I head out.
1 to 30, I think. Mrs. James tells me that all the time. You know, we should all hide in the closet so when she comes back, none of us are here. Nope, too late. Thank you, Sandra. Sorry to have.
I'm putting my money on 8 feet.
No, I think it's going to be about 35.
So we're showing a pathway of 8 feet, and then we're showing a setback. It's,
From the existing wood
hold on, wait a
fence.
sec. Oh. Oh, wait, I've got the wrong drawings here.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to make this so hard. But
Knew
it's,
that was not looking right. Thank you for being patient.
that's all right. So from the existing, what would be the northern property boundary of the Ivy Court homes to the face of the building? I think it's fairly substantial, but
Yes, we're looking at a setback of 24 feet.
thank you very much. That's my only question. Would the Bartizanos like to speak?
Thank you. I'm Steve Bardisona, it's my wife Pat, and we're the applicants. I'm just going to share a few reasons why we're doing this. We've had more people ask us, are you really going to build a house back here? And it's not the typical location, I suppose, for homes, but we have our own particular reasons for wanting to do that. I wanted to share them with you, tell you where we're coming from. I'll try not to bore you nor take too much of your time. We've always had a residence on the property. And one of our goals, Pat's and mine, when we came up here in 1974, was to continue to live on the property if we could, knowing full well that at some point in time that land use would change. It was destined to do that. During the time when we tried to, when we developed the site plan for the hotel, early on in the site plan that the development agreement was based upon, we tried to incorporate the home that we had into the property and see if we couldn't make both uses work. And the harder we tried, the less reasonable it became, and we finally just gave up and decided that what we would try to do is see if there's some place on the property where we could relocate. There is a 60-foot wide view corridor, which is not mentioned in the report, by the way, but that's fairly extraordinary, that borders the south edge of the property from Yonge Street down to this lot, frankly, and onto the creek, part of it onto the creek. That's where the pathway circles the property that you're looking at. What we found when we did a little surveying is there was an 8-foot drop in elevation from Yon Street to the existing grade at the time down by the creek. And that even if you put a pad down there in order to accommodate development, which we've done, and also a home on top of the pad, that the elevation of that, the ridge of that home would be lower than the tree line, and probably lower than the homes to the east. So in working with the town, they needed more land to the north for the affordable site, and my wife eventually says, why don't we see if we can't scope out something back there to build a replacement house? And that's how this site really came about. We also feel strongly that, and have for a long time, that there's a traditional relationship between residential use and commercial use. If you go back a generation or two, it was not unusual for people to live in or near the area and the properties where they conducted their businesses. It was pretty common. And I don't think that it's unusual to think that you can still do that today. There's another reason for putting it back there, and that is that we don't believe that the below market units that are back there need to be a negative to the folks who live around them. And we wanted to make our statement that we were willing to live around them. We wanted to live around them. We intend to be good neighbors to that project, and I'm sure they'll be good neighbors to us. So there's all of that kind of focuses on that drives us to want to build a home there. We saved some things out of the house that we had to raise. Some materials that we actually brought from Napa when they did their reconstruction or so-called redevelopment back in the mid-'70s. Some 3x16 foot Douglas fir, 3 by 16 inch Douglas fir beams that when we got them out of a building down there were 50 feet long. In order to transport them up here and had to get rid of them quickly out of there, we had to cut them, and we cut them to fit that house that we tore down. And they're still about 25 or so long. So we're going to try to incorporate that, and there's some redwood that came out of the old house that was a wine tank, a vertical wine tank. So we're going to try to work some of that into and recycle some of that into the structure that you're looking at. So that's kind of our short and dirty story. I want you to know that and why we're doing that back there. We think it's a great site. If you get on the site and actually look out to the west, it's quite appealing, at least to us. So that's where we're coming from. I'd like to have Rob Anglin, who's the architect, share some thoughts with you about the architecture, maybe some materials, and we're both available to answer any questions that you or anyone else might have. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Rob?
Hi, good evening. I'm Rob Anglin of Anglin Design, which is located here in Yountville. And I thought Sandra had a very good report in terms of the thoroughness of reporting on what the materials were and what our intentions were. We really did want this to fit in with the design of the Bardessono Inn, and so we really used a lot of the materials and the details of the inn so they would fit seamlessly with the rest of the inn. I think that building another kind of architecture on that site would have been inappropriate, and the Bardessono certainly didn't want to see that happen. And so the materials that we're using, as Sandra said in the report, are materials that you see in the inn itself in other locations. I think one thing that you should know that we're doing is we're using what's called Bardessono stone. And that stone actually came from the Bardessono house, and they used a lot of that in the actual construction of the inn. And when they ran out of that, they found another source that looked identical to that. And you can see in the drawings that we have that we've incorporated quite a bit of that into it. The only material that doesn't exist in the inn that we're using is a stucco. And that stucco would be an integral color stucco that would be in a tone that would be similar and compatible with the Bardessono stone. The inn itself is a very energy efficient building and is going for LEED Platinum, which is the highest level of certification for a green project. And within that spirit, we would really like to do similar components in our project. So we're looking at using solar panels on the roofs. In the inn, they've used a flat solar panel to generate electricity on the inn's property, and we're looking at doing something like that. We're also looking at using high efficiency mechanical systems within our project. And so I think that we are following the same spirit as the inn in what they've done. And I think that in terms of some of the amenities that we've tried to incorporate into the site is on the southwest corner, or southeast corner, sorry, which is actually the highest point of elevation because, as Steve said, from the west to the east, from Yon Street towards the creek, it does drop in elevation. And at that point, it's a little bit less than 3 feet from the grade at the pathway to the pad itself that's existing there. And the building is actually pulled back from that point, and we have landscaping. If you can see it, it's a little what's in the upper right-hand side there. We have landscaping above that platform, and then it's set back from that. We have the fence, which is also in the same design as the other fences throughout the Bardessono. Another element that the Bardessonos wanted to incorporate was some kind of a water feature. In that courtyard, the rooms, this is the south elevation that you're looking at, and that curved wall is a glass block wall. In the center of that would be an element that would have water flowing both ways, both towards that interior courtyard that you see in the drawing there, but also out towards the pathway. And it would be actually behind the existing block wall that's there at that point. And so the water would flow in both directions down. It would go into a little pool and then recirculate back up to the top again. And the Bardessonos really felt that that would be something that might be an amenity for people walking through that area. So I would be very happy to answer any of your questions that you might have now or later. Both Steve and I would be happy to do that.
Questions for Rob or Steve? Ladies?
No, just a comment. I always loved looking at your house, your original home when it was there, and I think that this one looks very handsome too, and I like it. I think it's going to be beautiful.
Thank you.
Any exposed cinder block like the inn has?
We're not using any of that. The only exposed cinder block that will be there is existing, and that's on the retaining wall. So it's along the pathway, you see that. But no, we're not going to use any of the split block on this particular project.
That was my other question. Are you proposing anything for that existing retaining wall there? Is anything going to happen with that?
Well, in terms of surfacing?
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking, and we haven't really kind of developed this idea, but I was thinking that that could be faced in stucco that would match the stucco of the building itself.
Okay.
So you'd have this platform building up to the building.
Okay, thanks.
I have no questions.
And I'm sorry, one did come up when you asked about that. To the west, it's hard for me to imagine, and I walk this path 3 or 4 times a week, but is there going to be no fence? I know that's identified as the front, and I know there's no real front to this building because of the unusual nature of it, but how is that going to function as a yard/space? And then it's open, as you mentioned, all the way to the street. Is there going to be some landscaping there? Is there the idea of potentially putting in a fence, anything?
No, there's not any intention at this time to put in a fence there. And in fact, what the Bartisonos have talked about is maybe having a small cooking garden there. You know, it's 20 feet away from the vineyard that extends west towards Yonge Street, and so it would back up to that. Maybe Steve could address that a little bit more, but no, there's not any intention at all. The fences that you see here are really meant to give privacy to the spaces, and only that. And so there wouldn't be any other fences to the west.
The whole backyard of the home that was there that we raised had a large outdoor wood deck with a patio over the top of it, an upstairs patio over the top of it. And the only thing out in the back was raised planter beds that were a combination of flowers and permanent plants and for decorative purposes and vegetables. There were some citrus trees in them and that sort of thing. And we sort of envisioned something like that out in the front to, you know, to circle that outdoor patio and be part of that. Rather, I don't think you'll see any lawn or anything of that sort out there, I guess is what I'm saying.
Any more questions for the applicant? Anyone in the public who'd like to speak to this item? Hi, Pat.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pat Alexander, and I live at the corner property at 6527 Heather Street. And I want to say hi to both Steve and Pat Bartisono, and I look forward to being your neighbor. And I also want to say that I love the idea of having neighbors next to a development. That was probably my husband's and I's biggest concern when we talked about, and, you know, we realized that the Bartisono Inn was going in. So Steve and Pat will be very good neighbors, I promise. Now, if you look at the drawing that you see up here, you'll notice that architecturally you see the design building, you see everything, but there's green all around the space there, which is a little bit difficult because what you have to put in is the rest of the landscape that you don't see. So what you'll see along there are other houses. You'll see a creek, a beautiful creek, which is really, really important. And those are a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. And also to thank you guys for being on the design and review board. It's a difficult job, and I trust that you'll look after our best interests. So the first thing that I'm looking at is the compatible with the existing community. It's true, if you look at the shape of the Bartisono Inn, it does conform, and it is very much like that. But we have to take into consideration the rest of the property. So you're right next to the Heritage Estates. You're right next to the Toyon Terrace properties. And of course, there's no correlation between the architecture of those two areas. So I would, in hindsight, take a look at how that property looks, not just according to the Bartisono Inn, but to the rest of the entire property and the use of that. Now, if we look at the actual setback and the lot size, that's one thing I wanted to really talk to you about. I'm sorry, let me go back to one thing. In the very first paragraph, it says, preserve significant visual and natural resources. Now, Jason, you brought up something about the setback to the creek. I would ask you to pay close attention to the care of that creek. Please, poor Hopper Creek has been really, really diverted in so many ways. And in the past, we've made decisions in development that haven't been best for the creek. And I'd like you to think about the creek for the next 50, 100, 500 years and realize that we can now put into place how we affect the creek. So it's a very important riparian corridor. There are birds that nest there. Please preserve every type of setback that you are able in your design review board discretionary, and please pay close attention to setback, and please respect the setback requirements as proposed by the EIR that was done many, many years ago that was sort of disregarded when it came to the development of the Bartisono Inn. please keep that in mind. Right now, I'm also thrilled that the Bartisonos are moving in next door because it creates a barrier between my backyard. What I'd like to do is invite each of you to come into my backyard and see what it looks like from my backyard. So unfortunately, I have a gigantic inn that looks into my bedroom window and my son's bedroom window every single day of the night and the morning. So when I wake up in the morning, no longer do I get to keep my windows open because, that would, I am exposed, unfortunately. The upstairs bar area and the upstairs patio, unfortunately, has the perfect shot right into where my bedroom is. And that's unfortunate. And a lot of the lights, while they are pointing down, because of the raised elevation of the inn, still shines directly. And I know that we've been working closely, and I know that something's going to be solved. But right now, I have lights shining directly into my bedroom window, and I have to keep a very darkened, double-padded curtains to prevent the light. So I would ask, please, that we pay close attention to those exterior lights. And again, I'm happy because there's going to be somewhat of a barrier for the light pollution. And then the sound, one more tiny thing. 24 hours, the pumps for the pool upstairs are cycling. There is a constant electronic hum that I can never get away from. So if there's going to be a water element, and I love the idea of a water element, but if there is a sound associated with the electronic hum and the electronical mechanical buildings, please respect the fact that it's 24 hours. It's not something that you can plug your ears or get away from. It is a constant 24 hours a day, 365 days a year sound that's brand new, that it's really difficult and quite maddening sometimes to deal with. So please keep in mind that that's something that I live with day in and day out. Let's see, let's keep going. Oh, the elevated platform. So originally the design of the inn really was very respectful of the height restrictions, and we saw the storyboards and things like that. Whoops, and then we realized not compatible, we have to raise up the elevation. So that means that even if everything's level, I'm still looking up like this, and that same thing is going to be true for my back bedroom window and my son's bedroom window, my backyard. The entire privacy of my domain has been completely and totally overtaken. So please, let's respect that idea too, as best we can. So again, building heights, please be vigilant. The setback, please, the creek is in your hand, not just for me, not just for my generation, but for generations in the future. One more tiny thing, sorry. I would please request that we reduce the size of that house. It's beautiful, and I know, sir, that it's beautiful and that you want a house that size. And in my tiny little 1,300 square foot home that's literally, I could, just yell over. We could toss eggs from house to house, truly. Consider a reduction in the size of that. Please respect the FAR. When it came time, when my husband and I decided to enlarge our family, we couldn't get a variation on that FAR. There was no possible way that the Design Review Board at that time would ever grant a variance. I would ask that you stick with all the neighbors. Be consistent. When you set an FAR, let's be really consistent all the way across. Perhaps reduce the size. Perhaps come up with a better size that might be a tiny bit more fair to the rest of us who live in the area. 1,300 square feet. I believe Megan's might be 29. Let's sort of contain the size of the building if we can. So height, size, setback. I think that's all I really wanted to say. But again, let me reiterate, Mr. Bartisono, I love the idea of having a neighbor next to such a huge business overlay retail, hotel, bar. It makes me happy to think that I'll have a neighbor next door, and I don't think I could get a better neighbor than the Bartisono. So thank you very much. And for all of you who work hard and who are late tonight, I really appreciate you kind of looking after the big picture for all of us. Thanks very much. And Megan had to pick up her daughter. Her daughter's in town. We both wanted to stay late. I think she'll be right back, so if you can possibly, oh, okay, yeah, I know that Megan Mason wants to speak as well.
Hello, ZDRB. My name is Tim Bringman, and I have a couple points here. And one of the points I have is the height of the lot. It's a little bit more than the 3 feet. In fact, the path is at least a foot, maybe even 2 feet higher than the adjacent properties. You can walk along the path and look right over the fence into the neighbor's yard. And I think a house raised 4 to 5 feet above the neighbors is going to be a problem in my view. Now, currently, there are no buildings of the Bardessono Inn property that are near any of the residences. Now, this building here is going to be adjacent to several residences, and I think that the visual impact is going to also be a problem. It's a pretty massive building, and it's unlike anything in Yountville except for the Bardessono Inn. It's a very industrial look. Some people like that, but it's not. It's not in harmony with the neighborhood. Another thing that I'd like to point out is a parking issue. I noticed on the paperwork I have here that the Bardessono property has 138 parking spaces. Yet virtually none of the employees ever park at the Bardessono. They're always parking in my neighborhood. They're constantly changing their clothes in the middle of the street. And because the south side of Fennell has no sidewalk, it's very common to see employees walking in the middle of the street. They make the traffic go around them. They make no effort to make way for the cars. And I'm just wondering whether this project, I'm sure during construction, that entire parking area is going to be not usable by the employees. And I'm wondering if that 20-space parking lot in the back is going to be reserved unofficially for the Bardessono residents. So I think that the parking also should be considered. That's all I have. Thank you very much for listening.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak?
Hello. I'm Megan Mason. I live at 5 Heritage Court, and I'm an immediate neighbor also. I get to view across the creek. I just want to make a few comments. We've lived through all of this process, and as much as it's an impressive project, I'd like you to consider the elements that have been discussed, such as the design which goes with the overall project. But again, I don't feel it goes with any other houses within the neighborhood, the Heritage, the Toyon. And for us neighbors who are immediately backyard, we are viewing heavy, the metal, the flat roof tops. It's not really visually appealing to me. We've been, I think, really good neighbors and quite tolerant. I'm concerned with lighting, as Pat said, or the lighting right now on the pool second story is on throughout the night. I get up in the night and I can see all the lights. It looks like an airport upstairs and downstairs in my house. And the lights, I don't know why they don't go off. They're on throughout the night until probably, I think, 7 a.m. So I would like to ask also that the lighting on this housing project, house, be considered, that it's respectful of the neighbors. And I also would like to suggest that perhaps to respect the FAR also and the size of it, the setbacks, which I think are really important to the creek, to the bike pathway, and we all have had to respect these same kind of restrictions and zoning. So I would request that that be something considered by you, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and we will now deliberate and make our recommendations to council. Who would like to begin?
Sure, I'll give it a shot. Thank you, Bartisanos, for bringing the plan forth, and thank you, neighbors, for your comments. I'm not going to argue that let me rephrase that. I agree that I don't think that the design of the home fits the standard residential design anywhere in Yountville. Having said that, I don't think it would be appropriate to impose a different residential design for something that adjoins the Bardessono Inn that already exists. I think it blends with the inn. I think it matches the style. It would feel awkward to have it be something other than it is as proposed. I think it helps actually being a one-story structure. It helps step it up towards the two-story Bardessono structure, the inn structure that is, and it serves as, if properly done, that is, it serves as a transition space between the existing residences to the east and south, and then the inn itself. So I think this is an important piece to the puzzle. It's a little bit hard to review and picture what's going on without a more detailed landscape plan. It's proposed as an island, and I'd like to see the landscaping between the wall and the pedestrian path addressed more completely. And I also think it's a good opportunity to address some of the neighbor concerns regarding the creek and the environment in that area. And I think it's a good opportunity to include some riparian plants and something that's going to help that area and reduce the impact of the wall and the height of the building. So those are my main comments. The other thing that I feel strongly about are the way the building integrates with the existing retaining wall. It's only a 3-foot retaining wall, if I remember correctly? Okay, 3 feet. To have the fencing and the walls that are proposed as part of the building on top of that wall, I think is a little bit much. In some areas, that's going to equal 9 feet, I think, from existing grade. 8 to 9. Do you want to clarify?
Can I address that?
Yes.
Sure, yeah, just
But please step up to the mic. You're answering a direct
Thank you.
question.
I just wanted to maybe clarify that. The site slopes in both directions from the north and from the west to that point in the corner there. That's the very highest point. Mm-hmm. And so the fences at the far end there, it's probably only 12 to 15 inches. I mean, the retaining wall is only 12 to 15 inches or so there. And then on the north side going up, the fences actually don't sit on the retaining wall until they're almost to the end of the building itself. So we really made an effort to not have the fences on the retaining wall at the highest retaining point. So
okay.
So it's only sitting on a small plinth, I guess, is the answer.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I was out there today standing roughly where the proposed glass block wall is, where the fountain would be as well. And my thought being out there is that those walls could benefit from being pushed back from the retaining wall to allow some more landscaping in that area and to break up that elevation. And I know you've done that in some spots. I was just thinking mostly about not the southeast corner, but the wall adjacent to the glass block wall east of that, breaking that up a little bit and just allowing some more landscaping and some buffering between those two elements. And then just to wrap this up, I think Mr. Bringman, brought up a good point about the parking, and I think that's a good condition of approval to consider here tonight, conditioning that the in parking not be used for construction, staging, or parking. Something to discuss at least. Thank you.
I can go next.
Please do.
Most of the stuff I wrote down was similar in nature about the landscaping, because that was the first thing I thought of walking through there and seeing the difference between, and I know there's even a difference between our site plan here and how we got it sketch up. There's trees missing and whatnot from this picture that are actually on the site plan. So I really do feel like that's an important piece and could break up a lot of the, well, some of the concerns of neighbors from having a building right there by improving some of the landscaping there, trees, whatever happened to go in there. And I think it's important to see those and see ideas. I love the idea of a garden walking back through there. I thought that was fantastic. Things like that to consider the site fully. In addition to that, love the fact that you're doing some more green building. Tell people about Barcelona Inn as they come in. So I hope that in addition to that, you're considering the riparian habitat. And I think that your intent is there. So I just hope that you can follow through, because you are fairly close to a riparian habitat. And it might be 40 feet to the property line, but that's the middle of the creek. So there's a fair amount of space there that can be affected, especially by the construction that's going to be so close to the creek there. I think, Sandra, you brought up something about the fence. I think that in consideration, we're just doing comments at this point, in consideration, the neighbors should be maybe allowed a higher fence in that area. There is an odd elevation thing that's going on from the two different properties. And I think that's, oh, and I appreciate everybody coming and saying things. I think a lot of the comments were about the Barcelona Inn, and I understand lighting and whatnot might be difficult from there, but I feel like that's kind of out of the purview of approving this part of the plan. So that's it.
I'll be happy to go again. As I remember, the home, the Bardesano home that was there originally didn't look like anything in the other neighborhoods either. And I know it was surrounded by vineyards at the time. So I think that the integrity that of the building materials and things that have it resembling somewhat the inn, I think aesthetically is less jarring than if there were a, big change in design. But I do definitely support the idea that fences on the other side of the creek be allowed to be taller. And it would be disturbing to have the light all the time and the noise of the generators, and that's something that should be taken up with the Bardesano Inn management. But and I think that a lot of the features that are going to be the landscaping could help to create more of a shield, a screen. So personally, that's, I think that we definitely want to do whatever we can to mitigate any impact on Hopper Creek, certainly. And that whatever can be done to do that, if it includes adding topsoil or whatever it includes, I think needs to be done. And otherwise, I think that it's a beautiful home, and you've certainly had to wait for it, personally. Thank you.
Madam?
Yes, I'm a little concerned about the riparian rights and the fences that the neighbors are going to put up. Is that something that I need to worry about? If all the neighbors facing the creek put up 6-foot fences, what does that do to riparian rights and the integrity of the creek? Am I misled here?
Well, we were commenting on the properties to the south that have their rear yards facing north. since the properties at the creek have existing trees and existing landscaping, that already gives them somewhat of a buffer.
But there is a fence there.
Individual homes do have fences, yes.
Yeah, okay. So that's the one you're talking about, walking along the creek, the one that Tim mentioned?
No, we were mentioning the ones to the south of the property, to the south of the path, the ones that are on Ivy Court, and their backyards face the higher elevations and
Right, right.
to deal with the...
I can't look over that fence.
I'm
so-
6'3" and I can.
I'm sorry?
I'm 6'3" and I walk there and I can, so I understand.
Ah. Okay, yeah, well, those folks certainly do. Anyway, to get back to the objections that we were presented and to deal with them as fairly as possible, most of what I heard had to do not with the residents, but with the inn. And I suggest that this is not the area where to settle that, but that should be settled as much as possible. And the only thing that does affect us here is the fountain that you have proposed for the residents. And if there is a motor attached to that, turn it off at 10 o'clock or whatever curfew meets with the sound regulations in town. The fountain would be wonderful. But if it's annoying to the neighbors, it should be limited. And as far as having the proposed residents conform to heritage and Toyon, that's not a relevant statement as far as I'm concerned. It needs to conform with the inn, and you're doing that. It looks like an unusual plan. I think it'd be very interesting. I wish you all kinds of luck.
Thank you. Much of what I'll say will probably echo some of what's gone before, so I'll go through it as quickly as possible. Rob and Matt in particular talked about parking. That's a very fair condition, that the inn property be precluded from being used for construction staging. And I think as a matter of course, that's somewhat required, that one must store one's own building materials on one's own property. I think it's a fair condition to ask, as a condition of building permit, but not of design review, that prior to building permit issuance, a landscape plan be approved either by the board or the council, and that can help militate against some of the concerns that have been raised. I would like to touch briefly the proposed condition that it never be used as a short-term rental. It's my view that the ordinance already adequately addresses that, and I see no reason to pile on merely a repetition of what we have. It seems to me an unfairly singling out of this property. I'm not supporting a short-term rental, but it's already prohibited. Why prohibit it twice? I think that would be more appropriate to look if there were changes to the ordinance broadly, fine. But it seems unnecessary to repeat it. I myself am very keen on the design and support it. I will, even though I don't know that you will like some of what I say, I think you're entitled to a response. One of the things I will agree with on lighting, given the sensitive nature of this property, I think it's reasonable for, again, this residential project to demonstrate with a photometric study conformance to the lighting standards. I think several of your concerns as the neighbors as they related to the operations of the inn. I don't know that there's anything here before us with which we can gain purchase to attack that. But I would encourage you to read the municipal code where it talks about the noise ordinance, and then even in the lighting ordinance. The lighting ordinance is very specific and has very specific metrics for what's allowed. And the noise ordinance just talks about what is the nature of the noise, is it intrusive? It's a much more subjective standard. And then maybe talk to the operators of the inn. But I don't see something here for this house that allows us to change the operations of the inn. There were several concerns with the height. And on several of these topics, I think our job is to verify that the ordinance is being complied with and then use discretion if there's a request for something different. With a building that's 14 foot 9 inches, I think the pad would need to be over 5 foot 3 inches for the aggregate height to exceed the height limit. I think it's reasonable to calculate the buildup of a pad as perhaps part of measuring the height in certain cases, but we could do that here up to 5 feet, and the overall building would still comply with the allowable height. So I have a difficult time saying make the building shorter when it's allowed up to 20 feet. Similarly, on the size and the FAR, it complies. I think kind of that ship has sailed when this parcel was approved at this size and the master development plan identified this affordable. It complies with those standards. We're not being asked to approve an exception or a variance. This parcel exists. Lastly, or the last two items, and I think some of these are shared, if we have 3 neighborhoods, whether it's the Bartizono Inn and Spa, Heritage, and Toyon Terrace, each of which are fairly distinct, I think the worst thing to do would be to try to have a design that did all 3 of them or pick 2 of them in one building. One needs to be picked. It's a subjective matter, but for my mind, I agree with Renata that it should match the Inn and Spa. Lastly, the creek setback, except to the extent there's anything controlling about the master development plan, here what I see is that at worst, the setback are 35 foot from center of creek or 10 foot from top of bank. At worst, it's exceeded. It's never at the minimum. So unless there's something before us that says they're asking for a reduced setback, I don't know that we can say do more than what's required. In fact, they already are doing more what's required. I made an exception to that to the extent there was an environmental study for the Bartizono project as a whole, but I would note that really the creek bank is off the property, and so the Bartizono development, the commercial development, should be addressing the mitigation, I would think. But irrespective of that, it exceeds the setback. The one thing I do think warrants really careful thought, though, it's fair to note that the side setback to Ivy Court is 5 feet to the property line, but the effective setback is 24 feet. I think the council is warranted to take a close look at how this parcel was approved. The effective setback is greater than any side or even rear or front setback at 24 feet you gave me. One could argue to a certain extent the Bartizonos gave up their side yard for a public path. But I would be interested in seeing the history of how that parcel was carved out. It would surprise me if there weren't some discussion about that. So that's what I have to say. I think you have everything you need, and that concludes this item.
Yes.
Any staff reports?
Thank you very
Sandra?
much.
I could fill you in on some of the projects that are under construction right now. I'm sure you've noticed they did grading over at the affordable housing site associated with the Bartizono, and they were able to complete that before the rains started. Hotel Luca is in the process of getting an asbestos report and pulling their demolition permit, and I understand that they'd like to do that in the next week or so, and then to begin construction in January. So there'll be a period of time when it's vacant and empty. And
Sorry, Sandra, did you say the Hotel Luca?
I'm sorry, I meant the Vita project.
I was going to say,
Very odd.
they're pulling the
Demolition,
demolition.
Oh, messed up. I must not be paying attention. So I'm glad you have the courage to ask.
And then the other projects are proceeding along. The Hotel Luca project, the Summerston Winery project, and happy to answer any questions if you have them, but that's a quick update.
None? Board reports?
I have a quick question. When it comes to landscaping installation, does the town, do you ever hold occupancy premised on finishing landscaping or anything like that? I'm thinking of the home, I don't know the address, on Staggs View Lane. It went through design review maybe 2 years ago. It's on the southeast.
Extraordinarily large attic.
With the G, exactly.
And the barren landscape.
And
right?
there's
Yeah.
a lot there. What,
I don't know the history of that project. I have observed what you've just noted. And I believe they've been in discussion with Bob that they'll be putting landscaping in. I don't know the timing of it. We obviously didn't hold up the occupancy on it. So it's something to consider. I think we might apply that with a stricter standard to commercial properties and residential. But I can get you an answer.
Yeah, just curious. I know I drive by it almost every day, and it doesn't bother me so much, but I don't live right next door to them. So I was just curious.
It would seem that front yard landscaping should be a condition of occupancy. I mean, in my business, many times I will ask for a temporary C of O because it's January. We really shouldn't be doing landscaping and grading now. Some jurisdictions will ask us to post a cash bond and whatnot. But it seems to be a reasonable condition. Do what you want in the backyard. It may have been,
Yeah.
I'm purely speculating, but that project has conditions of approval dating back to, I think, 1990. That house, one of the hard parts about approving it was not subject to the current standards. It was subject to the standards that were in effect at the time the whole Holman project was approved, which was 90 or 92. So I'm speculating that may have come into play. There may not have been a requirement for landscaping. I don't know that.
Okay.
It was. Anyone else? Unanimous consent for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved.
All right.